Welcome. Today we will continue with our case discussions. Today we will take up a case which is very important with regards to in the area of employee selection, and we find now, like, for recruitment and selection purposes, maybe social media has become one of the important ways where people try to look into the profiles to find out whether an employee is suitable or not. So today's particular case is going to deal with, like, whether it is ethical or not to look into the profiles of the people from the social media. The case is stated as of your face from on Facebook. The case is taken from the book of Crane and Martins. The earlier case also that was discussed is from the book of Crane and Martin. The case goes as such, like, you are the personal manager of the Alcure Pharmaceuticals. It's a busy time and the guys in the product approval department have called you up because they desperately need to hire a new team member to assist them with the clinical tests of what could become the next blockbuster drug for the company. You get to work and within a week have actually managed to get 3 well qualified applicants for the job. The interviews went well and there were 2 really good applicants. Both are women, recent college graduates, and you find it hard to decide amongst them. So from the first paragraph, as the situation goes, you find, like, you are the personal manager of the certain pharmaceuticals. It's a busy time for them, and the guys in the product approval department have called you up because they desperately need to hire a new team member to assist them with the clinical test of what could become the next blockbuster drug for the company. So, and within a week maybe you find someone. So issues could be regarding the recruitment process itself, like how well planned it is or not, because what you get from the start of the scenario is like it is a very hasty affair which is done. The clinical trials that the new hire will work on are very important. They require a very reliable, meticulous work attitude, but also good social skills to manage the different relations between the clinics, the approving authorities, and various departments in the company. So it shows, like, the clinical trials which are required, it requires a part of your social skills to manage the different relations between the clinics, then the authorities, and maybe various departments. So it's more or less a coordinating activity, and like good social skills so that maybe the work gets done. A colleague suggests you check the 2 finalists out on MySpace, Facebook, or any other social networking site. Later at home, you go on to Facebook, and yes, one of them is there. Surfing through the posts and her photos, you see a very sociable, obviously well traveled individual. The other candidate is a bit more difficult to locate. This is too bad, as she already has some work experience, and this is the slightly better candidate of the 2, is the impression that you get in your mind. So one person has a social, you can get the social profile. So and you find like what is appearing, she's sociable, well traveled, and individual. But for the other person, though according to qualification you find better candidate or the better work experience, you are not able to locate that individual in the social network, and this leaves you with somewhat a bad feeling. Her details are only available to friends, but browsing across through a list of some 400 friends, you find that one of your current interns is actually on her list. So, what you started doing is you started browsing her friends list, maybe 400 of them, and you find one of your interns on that list. Next morning, you ask your intern, who it turns out has briefly met the second candidate on a course they took together at college years ago, whether you could have a look at the Facebook page of the second candidate. So you call your intern, who may have met the second candidate some years ago in some college course, and you asked her like whether she could, like you could access the second candidate's Facebook page. Doing so, you make some interesting discoveries. Not only do you find a number of photos of her at parties with precious few clothes on, but there are even two pictures where she enjoys what undoubtedly looks to you like a line of cocaine. You thank your intern for her help, and walk back to your office wondering what to do. You certainly do not want to hire someone who has this kind of reputation, or where patients in trials or people from approving bodies say, "Heard about Dr. X, you really have to see these pictures." Now, what are the possible ethical issues in this case? So, what we can understand, the case is that one of the important stakes over here is like whether the information on Facebook is relevant for the job at hand, whether the process in which it was obtained was okay, because it was the profile was available to a group of friends, and one of those friends were contacted to get this contact, and then like, is it not, we are also encroaching on the individual's privacy. So, like in the case of like when you're accessing this Facebook profile to look into what the person's social life is like. So, so this is the, like when you're dealing with the place of, we already discussed in last of the sessions like IT and maybe the ethical issues related to it, social networking sites. So whether this technology brings us more responsibility on our part to think of what we are supposed to do and what are our responsibilities, and how we should use information and for what purpose. So the two three stakes are then the individual's privacy and relevance of the information that you have taken from Facebook for the job, and third of course is the process in which it is obtained. So, and whether it was necessary for the job for which we may argue like, yes, social skill we want to test, but are there not other ways of testing the social skill that needs those are the things which are debatable over here. So, the questions of course which are following these are like, what are the main ethical issues in this case? The main ethical issues in this case are like the individual's right to privacy, and it also includes the individual's right to control information about oneself and to control situations where such information will be like available. So, you can this can be seen from the all the four perspectives, basic ethical perspectives like rights and justice, ethics of duties, utilitarianism, egoism, as we have discussed in the earlier case. We can see this from the light of the different stakeholders involved in the case, like first like that of the personnel manager as for the intern, then for others. For the personnel manager, the privacy issues are like whether seeking information about the candidate's private lives as a way of deciding whom to hire is okay or not. Seeking private information, the second candidate has not made her profile public, and it was therefore confidential. So, and when the manager like tried to contact the intern who is on the friends list and tried to get hold of that information, then it is compromising the candidate's informational privacy. So, this is more important because the candidate did not use any of the company's time or resources to generate her material. So, was it right for the person, for the personnel manager to encroach into that privacy to seek information? According to power relationships, the manager was higher in power dynamics as compared to the intern. So, and the manager was able to access to this page only through the intern. So, this may be an abuse of power of the personnel manager. If the intern was not there in the friends list, maybe he would not have been able to have access to this information. For others who were there, so the like for the colleagues who suggested looking up the candidates in the Facebook or MySpace, so it was easy for them to make the suggestions maybe, but was it appropriate in the sense, because they were suggesting the personnel manager to like invade into other people's privacy. So, were they responsible enough while suggesting this? Were they aware enough of the after effect of what may happen if these things were done? For the intern, it is the betrayal of the trust by giving the employer access to a closed network. So, whether it is ethical for the intern also to behave in that way, because she was in the closed group of the second candidate. So, these are the possible ethical issues with respect to the what the people did and whether it was ethical or not. Second question could be, what are the main ethical arguments for and against the use of social network for potential employers in this situation? Both the things, actions may have a positive and negative outcome. So, we have to take over here, like, and because we may find people are going both for and against the action taken, like for using social network for the selection and maybe against the use of social network also, networking sites also. So, what we find over here, the arguments is, so like for the use of social networking, so those arguments which are for it is, it provides extra information to people on the candidate, which could be useful for determining whether the candidate will be effective in the social element of the job. Given the sensitivity of the position and the specific nature of business, and thus the ability of the employee to do the harm is justifiable. Against the use of the social networking sites is, it invades the privacy of the candidate, which is not only unnecessary but it is unethical also, and permits the manager to make inappropriate moral judgment of the private behavior. So, it is, we are having the arguments both for and against the use of social networking sites, but the against arguments we understand, like it is working against the privacy of the person, or for the to helping the manager to make inappropriate judgment about the private life of the person. But we have to understand again those arguments which are going for the use of the social network in that networking site. So, the overall statement like this will help in understanding whether the person will also be effective in the social element of the job is a like statement which is very general in nature. To understand that, we have to understand what type of behavior as a part of the social element of the job is desirable, and what is that I am going to tap through by looking into the Facebook profile. So, if this is not, clarity is not there, then we may like use some comments in the sense like we see something and then maybe try to judge the whole situation based on giving an overall comment, like we are trying to see whether the person can take care of the social element of the job, and there may be mismatch of qualities. So, to define, to find out like whether the person is suitable for the social element of the job, first the behavioral aspects that is required as the social element of the job needs to be defined clearly, and then those qualities need to be verified from the Facebook profile. So, general statement may not be appropriate here. So, when we are finally maybe deciding about how to decide about the if the personal manager, because the case ends with a dilemma where he is not able to decide what to do, and if it is the personal manager has to decide in this type of situation. So, again we know, like, because the ethical decisions are like decisions where a lot of dilemma is there. So, this could be like n number of answers are possible. So, and it is a very welcome situation where people are expanding their thoughts on while they are reasoning for it. So, however, one thing is very clear from this case, like if the Facebook knowledge of the profile from the Facebook is not there, then it is very easy for the person to decide, because by comparing the two profiles he may find like the second candidate is more in terms of experience maybe, and in terms of like the job done or so, but than the first one, and that gives a choice. But when it comes to again the social part which is viewed from the Facebook, and it gives a favorable picture to the first candidate and somewhat undesirable picture of the second candidate, then the dilemma starts for the personal manager. So, what could be n number of answers are possible, but what could be like possible alternatives, like instead of thinking of this candidate or that candidate, means instead of going for a binary decision. So, this could be, other options could be like hiring the more able candidate and competent candidate, but with a conditional that there will be random drug testing, because in one situation what it is mentioned, like what the second candidate is taking is appearing to be cocaine. So, then but again drug testing itself is very controversial, because whether it is required or not for the job at hand needs to be defined. Then the other thing could be like why it was necessary to go to the Facebook, and if we tell like it is to find out the social skills, to get information of social skills, then it is we have to debate about whether Facebook is the only alternative through which we get the social skills done, tested, or we can very easily get it through maybe some games that we do, role plays that we do in the selection process itself. So, and include that as a selection stage, and come to more accurate decisions about candidates' social skills. So, instead of just going for a like the secondary search, if you are just coming for understanding, like if you really want to see the social skills, can we go and discuss or test it with the help of games, role plays, and then this becomes also a screening process. So, other side of the thing, what we may not be have occurred in the person manager's mind at that point of time. So, like if the second candidate supposedly is not selected, but she comes to know from her friends maybe, or even the intern or via any friend, like it is the personal manager who has accessed her Facebook page, which is a private page, not in publicly, like available publicly, then then it becomes a public relation issues if she doesn't get the job. And she can even go for telling about getting discriminated, and that can be taken to court also. So that there this is a debate which is there, and it needs to be answered, like whether what are the skills that we are looking into. Is it the Facebook going to really give an answer to the skills? What if whether we have a profile, and what if we do not have a profile? And here the focus of the case is only on the second candidate, and it is told about the first candidate like it is well traveled individual and social and all. So there is no way of cross checking also over here whether the person has tried to do some impression management while posting this profile, because faking of profiles could happen also. And how do we guarantee like the impression that that you get about the first candidate, because you have accessed her public profile? Maybe you have not got hold, you do not know about her, she may be having another profile created which tells us about the like a private profile to which you may not have an access. So how do you know like she is also not of the same quality? Because what you see is a public profile, and there maybe she has posted or those things what will make her look desirable. So how do we know like this is not happened? So in this case and similar cases also, from case to case basis, we have to understand how far essential it is to go through these profiles, how much weightage should be put on the decisions if we are considering this for the decision making. What are the other selection criteria or test should be included, so that even if we are considering the Facebook profile or yes or not, then what is the weightage and what and relative weightage of all the different ways of selecting, so that even if we are not able to select it, maybe the person through Facebook profiles or social networking sites properly, but the other cross checks that we have, maybe through the games or role plays, will tell us about the social skills of the person. And before actually going into the Facebook profiles or the other social networking profiles, we have to know ourselves what are the desirable social skills for the job we are trying to find out from the social networking profiles. If we have this clarity in mind, if we have the relative weightages fixed that we'll be giving to the maybe the interviews, the competencies of the candidate, the capability of the candidate, the Facebook profile and other relevant maybe tests that we do, then we may include it as one of the ways, but before we are sure enough, and whether, like, if it's a question of debate, and whether we have been able to access similar kind of profiles for all the candidates, if we've asked our questions to ourselves and got the answer from our moral impulse, also from the postmodern ethics, if we're telling, like, what if the person is a good candidate but does not have a social network profile? So are we going to select or deselect that candidate? So if we have answered to those debates properly before we take an action, our action becomes more justified. Thank you.